A 150-pound Bullmastiff that 3 different families had returned for being too much dog for a house now does the exact same thing every single night. He waits outside a 5-year-old girl's bedroom door, completely still until she calls his name. And what the small camera on her dresser caught him doing after she fell asleep left her parents sitting on the bedroom floor at 2 in the morning, unable to say a single word. Because what nobody expected, not the shelter, not the family, not even their vet, was that this enormous, wrinkled, slow-moving giant wasn't just keeping her company at night, he was keeping her alive. His name was Otis. He was 150 pounds of loose skin, deep facial folds, and a black masked face that made grown men step off the sidewalk when he walked by. But Otis had never heard anything in his life. His first owner was a retired school teacher named Walter Mejia, a widower in Aurora, Colorado, who had spent 2 years training Otis to be a comfort dog for the children's board at a local hospital. Walter used to say Otis was one of one, that there would never be another dog with a heart that size. Then Walter passed away in his sleep one February morning, and Otis, 6 years old and grieving in his own quiet way, was surrendered to a shelter outside Denver by a relative who couldn't keep him. That is where the problem started, because on paper, Otis was perfect, house-trained, gentle, certified. But people do not read paper. They see 150 pounds. They see the wrinkles and the jowls and the sheer size of him, and they walk past. 3 families took him home and brought him back within a month. Too big for the couch, too big, too much, too intimidating. By the time the Carter family walked through the front doors of that shelter on a gray Saturday in March, Otis had been sitting in the same concrete kennel for 211 days, facing the back wall, no longer looking up when footsteps came down the row. Hannah Carter was not even there to adopt. She had brought her 5-year-old daughter Nora to drop off a box of old towels and look at the cats. That was the plan, but Nora let go of her mother's hand the second they passed the dog kennels, walked straight past all the barking, jumping, tail-wagging dogs, and stopped at the very last one, Kennel 19, the one with the giant brown dog facing the wall. "Whisper," she said, "this one's sad." Hannah tried to steer her back toward the puppies. Nora would not move. She crouched down, pressed her small hand flat against the cold kennel bars, and said one word, "Hi." And for the first time in 7 months, Otis turned his enormous head and looked at a human being like he was deciding whether it was safe to hope again. They brought him home that same afternoon. Hannah's husband, Mark, found out the way a lot of husbands find these things out, through a photo text of a 150-pound dog already asleep across the back seat of the family SUV, with the caption, "His name is Otis. Nora picked him. We will talk when you get home." Mark called him a horse, then a hippo, then by the end of the first week, he just called him Otis, because by then the dog had folded himself into the family like he had always been there. But it was Nora and Otis who became something else entirely. From the very first night, Otis refused to sleep anywhere except the floor beside Nora's bed. Not the expensive dog bed Hannah bought, not the warm living room. Her room, her floor, her side. And every single night, a ritual began that the family would come to build their entire evenings around. After her bath, Nora would climb under the covers, pat the mattress twice, and Otis would rest his massive head on the edge of the blanket, his jowls spreading across the comforter like spilled syrup. Then Nora would open a soft, worn picture book called Ollie the Acorn and the Mighty Idea and read it to him out loud, sounding out the hard words, her small finger tracing under each line. Otis never moved. He watched the pages turn like he understood every single word, and he would not lie down to sleep until Nora's eyes had finally closed for the night. Mark started calling it story duty. Hannah called it the sweetest thing she had ever seen in her life. Nora just called it normal because to her it was. She had no memory of a single bedtime without 150 pounds of Bullmastiff standing guard at the foot of her bed. Some bonds never announce themselves. They simply quietly become the most important thing in the room, and you do not notice how much until you try to imagine the room without them. It was Hannah who set up the camera, not for any serious reason, just a small white nursery camera in the corner of Nora's dresser, angled down at the bed. Nora's grandparents lived in Arizona and were always begging for clips of the giant and the girl, as they called them. Hannah figured she would catch a few seconds of the bedtime story routine, send them off, and collect the heart emojis the next morning. She had no idea what that camera was about to show her instead. The first night of footage was exactly what she expected. Nora read her book, Otis listened, she fell asleep mid-sentence, and Otis lowered himself to the floor with a sigh that seemed to shake the windows. If you are still here but you have not subscribed yet, I will be honest, that stings a little. Stories like Otis are why this channel exists. Hit subscribe. But around the 3-minute mark, Hannah noticed something small and strange. Otis got back up. He pressed his nose against the side of Nora's neck, held it there for a long moment, then lay back down. 20 minutes later, he did the same thing again. Hannah thought it was sweet, a good night check. She did not think about it again. The second night, the footage showed the same behavior, except more often. 5 times, 6 times, Otis rose in the dark, pressed his nose carefully to Nora's face and neck, and settled back down, each time a little slower to relax. The third night, he barely slept at all. He paced the bedroom. He stood over her. At one point, he lay all the way across the doorway, as if nothing and no one was getting past him. Hannah watched the clips the next morning and felt the first thin thread of unease pull tight in her chest. Something was wrong, she just could not name it. And because of that one quiet feeling, she left the camera on one more night. That decision saved her daughter's life. The fourth night, the camera timestamp read 3:11 a.m. when Otis did something he had never once done inside that house. He barked, one deep, enormous, wall-shaking bark, then another. On the screen, Nora did not stir. Otis pressed his whole head against her shoulder and pushed hard, in a way he never would, then took the edge of her blanket in his mouth and pulled it clean off the bed. When she still did not wake, he turned, ran out of the frame, and the audio caught the sound of 150 pounds of dog throwing itself against Hannah and Mark's bedroom door, again and again. Hannah was on her feet before she even understood why. She ran into Nora's room and found her daughter burning up, her skin damp and gray, her breathing fast and shallow, her small body almost impossible to wake. There was a faint, oddly sweet smell on her breath, a smell Hannah would soon learn to be terrified of. Mark called 911. Otis would not leave the bed. He stood over Nora the entire time, trembling until the paramedics arrived and had to gently guide him back to reach her. At the hospital, the doctors used words the Carters had never had any reason to think about before: blood sugar, ketones, diabetic ketoacidosis. Their little girl, with no warning anyone had caught, had developed type 1 diabetes, and her body had been sliding toward a crisis for days. The attending physician told Hannah something she has repeated many times since. If Nora had stayed asleep, she may not have woken up at all. Then he asked, gently, how they had known to check on her at 3 in the morning, and Hannah, exhausted and still shaking, said the only true thing she could think of. "Our dog told us." The doctor was not surprised. Stories like this do not get told nearly enough, and if this one is reaching you right now, you already understand why we keep telling them. He explained that the rising ketones in Nora's blood produce a faint, sweet, fruity scent on the breath, far too subtle for any human to notice, but unmistakable to a dog. Otis had not been giving Nora goodnight kisses on that footage. For 3 nights, he had been smelling the danger growing inside her, checking and rechecking, trying in the only way he knew to tell someone the little girl he loved was slipping away. He had been a comfort dog his entire life. Nobody had ever taught him to be a medical alert dog. He simply decided, somewhere along the way, that this was his job too. Nora came home 4 days later with insulin, a glucose monitor, and a new normal. And waiting at the front door, exactly where he had sat for 4 days refusing most of his food, was Otis. When Nora walked in, the 150-pound giant who frightened strangers off sidewalks lowered himself to the floor and let out a sound the family had never heard from him before. A long, broken, joyful whine, his whole wrinkled body shaking with it. Nora wrapped her arms as far around his thick neck as they would reach. Mark sat down right there on the entryway floor and cried into the dog's shoulder. The same dog 3 families had called too much, the same 150 pounds nobody had wanted. Today, Nora is 7, Otis is 8, gray around the muzzle now, a little slower on the stairs. The bedtime ritual has not changed. She still reads him Ollie the Acorn, even though she outgrew it years ago, because it belongs to them now. The little camera still sits on the dresser, though everyone in that house knows it was never really for the grandparents. And every single night, after Nora finally falls asleep, Otis still rises in the dark, presses his nose gently to her neck, breathes her in, and only then lies down to rest. He is still doing the job no one ever trained him to do. He is still, just as Walter always said, one of one. If your dog is restless, pacing, or pushing at you in the middle of the night, please do not wave it off. There is almost always a reason. They live in a world of senses we lost a very long time ago, and sometimes they understand what is happening to us long before we do. Listen to them, trust them, and if you ever find yourself standing in front of a row of kennels, looking at the big one in the back that everyone else walked past, remember Otis. Some stories are simply too important to keep to yourself, and sometimes the dog the whole world calls too much turns out to be exactly enough. 3 families looked at a 150-pound Bullmastiff and saw a problem too big to keep. A 5-year-old girl looked at the same dog and saw a best friend. So tell me, do you think Otis was somehow trained for this, or did he just know? Tell me in the comments.